All right. So I think we will get started because we have a lot to talk about today. Thanks to my guest here, Sebastian Trolli. We have been doing a lot of prep and we're looking forward to sharing it with our audience today. I'm Gerry Abbey, Director of Product Marketing here at Copia Automation. I've been doing a lot of research on industrial DevOps, and that's what brought me to having many conversations with Sebastian over the last several months. Sebastian, thank you again for taking the time to join this fireside chat today. I would like to pass it over to you so you can do a brief intro and say hello to the audience.
Thanks so much, Gerry, and thank you so much for the Copia organization for your interest in having me, right? This is an enormous pleasure for me to share not just with you, but also with the audience, some of our key findings on the research of the industrial DevOps landscape, right? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone in the audience. My name is Sebastian Trolli. I'm based out of Buenos Aires, Argentina. I am currently a research manager and head of the Industrial Automation and Software Research Program at Frost & Sullivan. Been in the company for 3 years now, and prior to that, I spent 4 years in the chemical manufacturing industry, serving as a lab technician and then a production engineer, and then switching to the industrial automation, process control, and industrial software landscape, working for a tier 1 organization in that space. Again, technical roles such as project engineer, application engineer, and then, climbing up the ladder to become technical solutions consultant and supporting the sales organization in business development activities. So again, Gerry and the entire Copia organization, thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome, and thank you, Sebastian. So let's dive right in. We have been talking at length about industrial DevOps. When you started digging into this research, what are some of the key things that you looked at? Maybe you could explain a little what DevOps is and how you see industrial DevOps as uniquely differentiated for the manufacturing and distribution space.
Sure, Gerry, and I really looking forward to this exciting discussion. Right, that's a really good question to set the stage to the audience, right? Yeah, I'd like to briefly talk about DevOps because I know in the previous sessions of this Fireside Chat series, you covered this topic a lot. So just to introduce the industrial DevOps topic first, I'd like to briefly explain or to share my viewpoint on DevOps, right? Well, DevOps is a framework or a methodology, right, born in the IT landscape, right, that aims to speed up software delivery without compromising quality by integrating, development, operations, and business into a cohesive unit with the implementation of continuous integrations and continuous delivery, CI/CD pipelines, continuous feedback loops, full stack automation, configuration management, orchestration, monitoring, and even microservices and infrastructure as a code, right? This is just a very, very brief definition of, or my viewpoint of what is the DevOps as a methodology who was born in the IT world, right? But the reason why we are here today is trying to see or to delve into how this DevOps methodology or framework got into the industrial landscape, right? And what I can say here is that industrial DevOps, as is it known, is none other than bringing these DevOps practices into industrial sectors, but with the specific approach tailored to the unique demands of manufacturing processes and systems, cyber-physical integration, and industrial-grade reliability, right? At the end of the day, what industrial DevOps does is to streamline the development and deployment of industrial software, ultimately fostering collaboration between the IT and OT teams, thus contributing to the so-called IT-OT convergence or IT-OT integration, right? And what we foresee as a market research firm is that companies that currently are not embracing this approach will soon find themselves dealing with legacy equipment, obsolete technologies, outdated systems, which translate into slow production times and sky-high operational costs, right? There is a question, right, or a really good topic to cover, which is how is DevOps evolving beyond just a technological framework, right? Because that's a trend that we are really seeing in the market today. DevOps, as I say, DevOps is evolving into more just a technological approach. It's impacting the way businesses operate. That's simply put, right? And DevOps is now becoming a core part of industrial operations. And this shift is way beyond just technological. It's cultural, right? It implies a mindset change. Why? Because it promotes collaboration between previously siloed teams or organizations within an enterprise, integrates businesses, right? Business objectives with technical deployments, and also enhances or improves the role of data on automation in every aspect of the operations, industrial operations, right? And the potential benefits of industrial DevOps, which are, just to name a few, improved uptime, faster deployment, increased flexibility and scalability, innovation, and at the end of the day, lower operational risk, are huge. So this is why we think industrial DevOps is way beyond just a technological, right, approach. It's more like a kind of mindset change, cultural shift that an industrial organization needs to embrace. And I'd like to touch on, yeah.
Sorry, could I jump in and unpack just a couple of your points there?
Yeah, sure, of course.
One of them, you talked about the legacy systems, and this comes up so much. I worked for Rockwell Automation before here and Plex Systems before that. And we were always looking at what are the systems that people are using today. And throughout manufacturing, throughout distribution, there is a lot of legacy software, a lot of legacy hardware. So I'm thinking about what is different with industrial DevOps. And I'm going to tease out what I think first, and then I'd like to hear more of your thoughts there. But I see it as a way to modernize the OT space through a technology platform and through what you were just talking about, a system and process that empowers people to make decisions faster, to have more rapid iteration as a team, to have a centralized way to collaborate. So it's not just, we're not just talking about a technology here, we're not just talking about a process, but it's that unification that amplifies the impact of people and gets their buy-in. Because technology, one of the biggest failures for any technology implementation is organ rejection, people rejection. We don't want this. We don't see why we should have it. There's no reason for me to change something I've done for 30 years. And especially in the OT environment, it's been so set it and forget it. I see industrial DevOps through case studies, through customer conversations, through our customer advisory board, changing and modernizing the way they do things by getting people bought in to what can be through simple steps. So I know I just blabbed on a little bit there with that, but I'd like to hear some of your thoughts related to that.
No, yeah, I completely agree, Gerry. And if I had to summarize all what we have been saying about what is industrial DevOps and its impact on the manufacturing industry, I will summarize it in just 3 words, which goes beyond the technological, right, approach. One is automation, which is kind of related to technology, but of course collaboration and continuous feedback. Right? We will see later with some use cases or some growth opportunities that this industrial DevOps approach, again, goes way, way, way beyond what is just a technology adoption. And what you say is true, right? You know, I have personal experience working for this technology vendor as a provider of refineries, being there, process, manufacturing, discrete manufacturing as well, seeing PLCs, CNC machines, SCADA systems dated from the late 70s, 80s, 90s. And there is an inherent, I would say, culture in manufacturing, OT environment, which is kind of reluctant to change, right? Why is, if I have this system, should I need to, evolve or digitally transform? Because industrial DevOps is one of the main enablers for digital transformation, right? So why should I do that if I'm doing this really correctly or really well and the system is functioning properly? Well, you will see that later in this discussion that there are some topics like, for instance, the inception of new technologies that can help improve productivity, like AI, ML, no-code platforms. Also, cybersecurity, which is one of the most important parts or one of the most important areas that is being addressed by industrial DevOps. So today, I think that industrial DevOps is not just an enabler of a digital transformation, it's just an imperative, right, for companies to modernize, because if you don't modernize, you will face, the risk of being outside of the market, because it's an imperative today.
Totally. And it just to preview some more things that we're going to talk about later, you mentioned security, and I know as we're talking through all of this, there's probably people on the call that are saying, well, it's not just that resistance to change. The resistance to change is rooted in things like, if we change something, it might break. And then we were dealing with downtime. And if we change something, it might make us more susceptible to a cybersecurity attack. So we're going to dig in later in the conversation into those topics. Before people start thinking, oh, they're glossing over these key things we're thinking about. But we're going to move into the drivers. So Sebastian, you were just touching on some of these, but I'd like to hear some of the drivers for moving into industrial DevOps, what's pushing it forward, and some of the challenges that we're facing and should be thinking about.
Sure, Gerry. Well, first of all, like a kind of overarching, as I mentioned, overarching driver is the need and imperative to digitally transform a company, right? And there are some implications on that, right? For instance, number one driver, or their top two drivers are reduce downtime, the need to reduce downtime, and cybersecurity, right? In terms of, well, and let me tell you this, you did an amazing job with your first annual State of Industrial DevOps reports. I took some references from there for today's discussion that will help, build a case on why these are the main drivers today for implementing industrial DevOps, right? As I said, that driver number one is reduce downtime, right? And within this driver, right, one of the primary motivations that buyers, right, end users, manufacturers have is reducing the operating costs that are derived from for unplanned downtime, right? As you reported in your first annual State of Industrial DevOps report, downtime is a significant financial burden, right? With estimates averaging $4.2 million per hour in unplanned downtime, with the largest enterprises facing losses as high as $7.7 million per hour. A good point is that Copia as an organization, Copia as a leader, Copia as a pioneer in the industrial DevOps space, addresses or helps address this unplanned downtime by leveraging your Git-based source control and continuous code device validation, providing end-to-end visibility and control, right? And this is all supported by your automated backup system, Device Link, which is built for disaster recovery, right? So not only this approach provides peace of mind for leading organizations, but also it gets, them prepared for what will soon be requirements to meet regulations, guidelines. As you know better than me probably, lawmakers are scrutinizing disasters more closely since particularly the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, right? So, and this leads into the second driver, which is cybersecurity. But I don't know, Gerry, if you want to highlight some points on unplanned downtime or leverage your own research on that?
I'll highlight one, maybe two.
Sure.
So,
okay, sure.
One, I'm sure people that are joining us today are saying those numbers are astronomically high, or those numbers are actually lower than what we're doing. Probably a lot of people saying they're high. We've gone through this Fireside chat series. We've talked about those numbers a couple of times, and I've done a ton of research on it, more research on downtime than I care to admit. And honestly, everybody's numbers are going to be a little different. Every organization is going to be factoring in different things. Some organizations might be factoring in for downtime time with lawyers because they need to bring them in and figure out there was a safety issue here. What are we liable for? How is this going to pan out? We need to bring in insurance. Insurance company needs to weigh in. What happens there? What is the cost there? There are these cascading numbers that could be pulled into your downtime figure. And this survey surveyed, I think 58% of the survey was over $1 billion in revenue a year, and around 30% is over 15 billion revenue a year. So we're looking at very large organizations that do have these very broad cascading considerations when factoring in their downtime number. So take it however you like. We understand that everybody's downtime number is going to be a little different, and I just want to reiterate that. And had another point that I lost because I was thinking too much about downtime here, but I'll come back to it. Sebastian, what were you going to go to next on the drive?
Yeah, the second main. Yeah, there are a lot of drivers, right? But the idea, for the sake of time, also is centralizing on what I consider to be the three most important ones. One is reducing the unplanned downtime, and the second is cybersecurity, right? I was mentioning the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack. You know, I saw a publication of an article written in the Industry Week magazine saying that in 2023, manufacturing was the vertical or the segment of the industry, the main target industry for cyber threats, right? So it's clear that there is a need to protect these vulnerable networks, right? OT never dealt in the past with this. It was more like a kind of IT, you know. No, it belongs to the IT world. We are protected, we are safe here, but it's not the case anymore, right? And according to your research, 47% of unplanned downtime in industrial facilities is caused by cybersecurity breaches, right? And what Industrial DevOps offers buyers here is a pathway to mitigate these risks through enhanced governance, visibility, and secure coding practices, right? Buyers are also concerned with compliance issues, which are becoming more stringent as governments and regulatory bodies place greater emphasis on industrial cybersecurity, right? And on this point, you know, I see Copia and your solutions, right? Mitigating these risks with your multi-vendor repository that centralizes all code changes and enhances transparency, right? And your cloud-based management allows for secure remote access and monitoring, which at the end of the day improves compliance with stringent regulatory requirements. That was what I wanted to say about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a topic by itself. We can have a dedicated session on it, but that is why it's one of the main drivers and how Copia helps addresses, right, these concerns.
And Sebastian, just one thing to add in
Sure.
there, if we're thinking about cybersecurity with your industrial code, we have lots of buyers that we've spoken with and customers that before Copia were thinking about who has access to our code. And as they started to dig in deeper and deeper, they don't really know. And it's one of those things that kept the CEO, COO up at night thinking about who could tamper with our code, who can access it, who can change it, and just mistakenly leave us open to a cyber attack. With an industrial DevOps platform in place, you have control over who's accessing it, and you have that visibility into who's changing code, when they're changing it, why they're changing it. And as you mentioned earlier, that importance of backup, which we're seeing really as table stakes within the industry right now, so that if something gets changed and breaks, you can revert and go right back to the state you were before the system crashed. And that is just so valuable for avoiding downtime, as we're talking about, and also just being ready in the case of a disaster.
Exactly. The disaster recovery topic, right? Which is extremely important as well. Thanks, Gerry, for that. That was a great addition. And again, another driver that I like to highlight here is the workforce challenges, right? And workforce challenges has many different facets, right? It's the aging workforce retiring, how to attract new generations, right, of young talents into manufacturing, which is tough, really. It's what we are seeing in the market right now, across the whole world, right, in the manufacturing market. So the idea is try to for buyers, right, which are embracing industrial DevOps in order to overcome this workforce challenge, is to have the possibility of implementing a platform that streamlines routine tasks such as version control, testing, and debugging in such a easy way, right? Without the need of having huge code development abilities or skills, right? And this platform had to offer a programming environment that reduces the learning curve for engineers and minimizes manual interventions, right? And what we are seeing with Copia, it's Git-based source control and, of course, automated backup system device link, is that you are offering this type of platforms that help, at the end of the day, with the inception of industrial DevOps in manufacturing, reducing these workforce challenges, right? So the workforce challenge, how to overcome it, instead of being a challenge, how to overcome it is a main driver in the manufacturing world today.
Totally. And being Git-based can be kind of double-edged sometimes, because younger controls engineers that are coming in have more of that traditional software training. So when they see that, they're excited. But older controls engineers and directors in the space are thinking, that's hard, it's challenging, and how are we going to get people on board with this Git-based product? And we've seen a whole bunch of different ways that people are doing it, and it really just looking for the low-hanging fruit of, we're just going to track changes. I was talking with one of our customers the other day, and that's how they got those older, more traditional in the space of OT and controls to be bought in. They united the team around, we want to do good work. Everybody can agree to that. Everybody agreed. And then it's building up that transition. And of course, as a platform, we aim to be as workforce friendly as possible, because we understand the skills gap, the difficulty with finding people, and the importance of being an employer of choice, which, when you have your digital house in order, you present a much more attractive offering to those employees that are out there. And we try and make this interface as intuitive as possible, as Sebastian was talking about, by being multi-vendor, pulling it in. And really, one of those key differentiations, having a visual diff, so that visually, even if you don't fully understand the code, you can see what's happening by color coding and having it right there in front of you. And that way, it's much easier for the collaboration, the team to work together, and to onboard people that are not familiar with it. It's just so important in any tool to have that commonality and have that accessibility for people of all skills.
Totally agree, Gerry. Yeah, and you mentioned some points what I'm going to discuss. I'm going to present right away. You mentioned before the resistance to change. You mentioned the multi-vendor environment, right? And those are, if I may now switch to the challenges, right? We mentioned the three, what I consider to be the three of the main or most important drivers. I'd like to highlight also three main challenges, right? One of them being, as you said, Gerry, the cultural and organizational changes, right? Because remember, we mentioned that industrial DevOps is not just about technology adoption. It's a mindset. It involves a mindset change, right? It's a cultural shift, right? So the idea is, why cultural and organizational changes is a challenge, right? Because one of the primary concerns among buyers is this change that is required to implement these practices, the IT-born practices successfully, right? And competing priorities, lack of interest from decision makers, budget constraints are all significant barriers to adopt these kind of solutions, right? And these challenges are compounded by the need for cross-functional collaboration between IT and OT and other stakeholders, which sometimes can be challenging to achieve in traditionally siloed organizations, which happens really frequently, in the manufacturing environment, right? Another challenge, and you mentioned the multi-vendor environment, right? Is, as you said, the complexity of multi-vendor environments, right? Because a multi-vendor environment implies managing multiple technologies, diverse technologies, communication protocols, integration, procedures, and industrial environments, are typically characterized by a wide array of devices, name it, right? PLCs, CNCs, SCADA systems, sensors, right? And intelligent field devices, for instance, all of which must be integrated, with and managed properly, right? And buyers, this led to buyers, right, being concerned about the scalability of industrial DevOps solutions and their ability to integrate with existing infrastructure without causing disruptions or even require, you would say, extensive, configuration, right? And regarding these two challenges, right, the organizational and cultural one, and the managing of or the manage of multi-vendors environments, I said that Copia, help industrial buyers navigate those two challenges, by providing a single platform that bridges both the IT and OT domains, right? At the end of the day, promoting cross-functional collaboration, right? So also your multi-vendor support simplifies the integration of multiple and diverse technologies, reducing the complexity of managing industrial systems from many different vendors. So that's a high point that I see in your solution, right? In order to overcome these two really important challenges that the manufacturing industry is facing today, right?
Totally. And they're an absolute necessity to address those.
Exactly. And I would like to point out or highlight one more challenge, if I may, Gerry, which is, you have to balance between cost and strategic value. Is the ROI justification thing, right? Another concern of the buyers is right, the cost of implementing industrial DevOps, right? Particularly in relation to its strategic value. Maybe sometimes it's hard for them to perceive the value of industrial DevOps because they are prioritizing cost above, the long-term benefits, short-term, but also long-term benefits of industrial DevOps platforms, right? And while there is a potential for cost saving through reduced downtime, the initial investment in technology, in training and process re-engineering can be substantial, or at least they think they can be substantial, right? And also the return of investment may not be immediately apparent, right? Especially in organizations where, are not so early movers or early adopters, or at least late adopters in digital transformation practices, right? That they need to, start from scratch, basically. And this of course creates some sort of tension, right, between the need to invest in future-proofing the business and the pressure to manage cost in the short term, right? So what I think is that with Copia's platform, right, you can aim for not just long-term, but also short-term savings, right? With your disaster recovery capabilities, your version control backups that ensure that downtime is minimized, directly contributed to a better profitability, right? So again, always the cost issue always arises, right? And for manufacturers, what I suggest, right, is to build a strong business case, right? Focusing on the short term, but also the long term savings, right? Which will turn into, again, better profitability, right?
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. And they always be thinking about the ROI, because nobody in the organization that's making a decision is not going to make a yes decision without some numbers that concretely show the impact on the business. And just to add to your points there, it's not always apparent where industrial DevOps is going to impact, and looking and trying to track now, how much time do you spend a month debugging your industrial code? Legitimately reflect on your organization how much downtime is a result of industrial code, because our survey showed striking numbers. So that's a great way to pull some numbers that we got from 200 executives in North America from large organizations to begin to benchmark and think about those metrics, and think about the speed of your team. So going back to the DevOps point, and I won't go too far on a tangent here, Sebastian, but why DevOps was adopted and mainstreamed in under 10 years from the creation of it in 2009 to many industry analyst firms calling it complete mainstream within 8 years, 7 years, is that it had a like 4 to 10-fold impact on the business. We're not talking about an incremental increase in productivity. We're not talking about 10%, 5%, 25%, even 50% of an increase in the productivity of your teams. We're talking about many times fold once they get going. And I always have to throw out a book recommendation. I'm going to throw out one here. If you're interested in unpacking that deeper, read the book Scrum, which talks about the Agile methodology when it was first started being used and gets pulled into DevOps and Industrial DevOps. And it shows you what type of impact this Industrial DevOps team can have on your organization and your functionalities. All right, with that, I know we have so many different topics here, so I'm going to push this forward. Our next area that we're going to dig into is the areas of impact. What areas of impact would you like to highlight, Sebastian, and growth opportunities? Because I know you've done a deep level of research on this recently.
Exactly. Thanks, Gerry, for that. Yes, we are, continue diving into the market pulse, right? We talk about the drivers, we talk about the challenges, right, in adopting industrial DevOps. And now I would like to dive deeper into, as you said, the areas of expertise and something that we are used to do very, very, very frequently in Frost & Sullivan, which is identifying the different growth opportunities, not just for the vendors, but also for the end users as well, in the market, right? And particularly now in the industrial DevOps space or sector, right? So one of the growth opportunities that we are seeing in the market, which is strictly or directly impacted by industrial DevOps, is the growth trend between the integration, the growth trend of integration between industrial edge, which is a huge trend in the industrial market today, and DevOps, right? And which is the driver for this integration, right? The driver is the need to process huge amount of data close to the data source, right? Whether from sensor, robots, or industrial machines, or any type of device, is a primary driver, right? And by integrating DevOps practices into edge computing, or into the edge, as you typically call it in the OT environment, manufacturers and end users can push updates to devices without centralized control, improving performance, security, and efficiency, right? And how do we see in Frost & Sullivan this opportunity in the short and in the long term? Over the next 1 to 2 years, in the short terms, we expect more DevOps platforms with native edge support, driven by increased demand for real-time analytics and control, right? And in the long term, let's say in 5 years, we see that industrial systems will likely fully leverage the edge DevOps convergence. So what is a need today in the short term will be a convergence in the long term, right? That's one of the growth opportunities that we are seeing today in the market regarding DevOps. Another is an increased focus on security-driven DevOps, which is called the DevSecOps, right, in industrial settings. The driver is that industrial control systems are increasingly exposed to cybersecurity threats as they become more connected to external networks and more integrated also to the enterprise networks in an organization, right? And ransomware attacks on critical infrastructure, right, have made this evident. Again, the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack as just an example, right? And how do we see this opportunity, this DevSecOps opportunity, in the short and in the long term? Over the next 1 to 2 years, more or less, we expect a surge in the demand for DevSecOps platforms designed to secure industrial environments from the ground up, right? And by the 5-year mark, we see DevSecOps, right, as a must-have for any industrial company looking to protect its infrastructure, right? So here you can see the convergence prior growth opportunity was the conversions between industrial edge and industrial DevOps. Now it's the conversions between cybersecurity practices and industrial DevOps, just to summarize, right? I don't know, Gerry, if you want to add any comment to those points. I would like to present 2 more growth opportunities, but please.
Just a couple thoughts. So we've talked about the Colonial Pipeline. That is a huge headliner. And a couple others, like we just had the CrowdStrike incident. That was IT DevOps not implemented fully. It was a very large deployment rather than the small continuous deployments that we talked about in DevOps and Industrial DevOps, which makes it more bite-sized and manageable. So that's another thing, that chunking of projects so that you're able to do more and iterate more quickly. It makes a huge difference when you're approaching it that way, and it avoids having this all or nothing incident that can crash your system and everybody else's. Clorox, when we're talking about cybersecurity incidents, had a huge one. I think it was last fall that was reported because that's part of the SEC reporting guidelines now, and a cascading impact. And that, again, I think dug into their IT and OT environment and that convergence being susceptible and open. And then the last one I wanted to call out, Toyota had a huge downtime incident that crashed 14 factories over 10 hours last year, purported around $356 million in total downtime cost because of a system update where they were not able to revert from that system update immediately. And it took them an entire day to get back up, which was a huge loss in value that they were not able to create. So there's so many different examples out there. These are the biggest ones that we hear about. There are so many other ones that we don't hear about. And those happen in big organizations, they happen in small organizations, and some of those organizations go out of business. And again, we never hear about it. So there are very real, tangible repercussions with not moving forward thoughtfully with your digital transformation and having solutions, especially a backup disaster recovery system in place. And not just like having it in place, but test running it, see how quickly you're going to get back up to speed, and looking for ways to iterate, which is all part of that industrial DevOps methodology to continually improve.
No, you're right, Gerry. Either it is large enterprise or a small medium business. And remember what I said, that 2023 manufacturing industry was the main target industry for cyber attacks, right? So it's really important to have this kind of platforms that allows you to easily, deploy a disaster recovery management system, right? So, and Copia did it so well. Another growth opportunity that I would like to highlight is the AI-driven automation of DevOps processes, right? As you all know, you, Gerry, the audience, since the inception of ChatGPT in 2023, right? Everybody in the world, not just within the industrial space, is talking about AI, right? So AI is a trend by itself. Now, having said that, which is the driver for this growth opportunity, right? The idea is that the industrial sector is turning AI to improve, or turning into AI to improve everything, right? From predictive maintenance to resource allocation to code development, right? And applying AI to DevOps processes allows organizations or industrial firms to automatically detect issues, optimize code, and even predict the impact of changes before they are deployed, right? How do we see this opportunity in the short term? Well, in the next 1 to 2 years, more or less, the adoption of AI-driven tools for industrial DevOps will increase, and particularly, of course, among forward-thinking organizations, those who are most likely to, implement digital transformation initiatives, right? By 5 years, a little bit into the midterm to long term, this tool will likely be commonplace, right? They will enable more autonomous operations where the human intervention is minimized. Always the human will be in the loop, but it will be more, centered into high-value tasks and not just routine or repetitive tasks, right? And one last growth opportunity that I would like to mention to the audience is, to you, Gerry, and the audience, is the shift toward low-code and no-code DevOps solutions, right? Because low-code and no-code solutions are really transforming the way software is not just developed, but also implemented or deployed across industries. Again, this no-code, low-code is a trend and initiative that was born in the IT landscape, and now is, since a couple of years back, is impacting the OT environment, right? Which is a driver for this? Well, the driver for this is a shortage of skilled developers, and OT engineers has pushed both vendors and end users to look for easier ways to develop, deploy, and manage software, of course, within their production environments. And in this way, enabling a new actor in the OT space, which is the citizen developer, right? Mm-hmm. How do we see this opportunity over the next 1 to 2 years? Well, we see a marked increase in low-code, no-code tools for industrial DevOps, enabling non-experts, the citizen developers, of course, to quickly configure, deploy, and manage software on the factory floor. And in the long term, we expect a good portion of the industrial landscape or workforce to engage in software creation, driving what we call a mega trend in Frost & Sullivan, which is the democratization of technology, and particularly in this case of industrial DevOps principles and technologies. So that's what I wanted to present to you, Gerry, and to the audience, about which we consider to be the 3-4 main growth opportunities in the industrial DevOps space, their drivers, and their future outlook, I would say, right?
Thank you, Sebastian. And just a few thoughts on there. I love these growth opportunities that you've identified. As we all know, AI is everywhere. And AI is not going to replace anyone's job, but those people that are leveraging AI and are familiar with it may replace a job or may get that promotion because they're using it. And we definitely likewise see AI being implemented into industrial DevOps platforms to help maximize the impact of that technology and maximize the impact of the people that are using it. To see a lot of room for growth there and so many avenues where AI can contribute. And then on your last point, thinking about the massive, massive benefits of having that accessibility in low code, no code, having people able to take it upon themselves and do that citizen development. It's also important and valuable to have the right technologies in place so that you don't have a whole bunch of people creating different things within your organization that are later going to be more difficult to bring together, but having a platform that empowers the people to uniformly do that citizen development so that you have an organized approach to your files, to your applications, to how you're launching them, how you're having everything interact. It can be so impactful and powerful. And that citizen development makes people, like, as you see the current generations looking for the value that they have in their role. They can have an immediate impact. They can see something they can tweak, and they can actually take that action and improve the organization. And what's better than that when you're in an organization and you see yourself doing things that are improving? It makes such an impact. And I think this is a great note to push into where we see the future of this space going. And Sebastian, what thoughts do you have there on the future?
Yeah, well, this is a really good point, what we are seeing as the future, right? Or the impact that industrial DevOps will have for the future of manufacturing, right? Mm-hmm. Not just from a technological standpoint, but also from an organizational standpoint as well, right? First thing that we see is that with the adoption of industrial DevOps, organizations will move toward cloud-based containerized architectures, which provide scalability, modularity, and easy integration of new technologies. What is, the holy grail of digital transformation, or at least the technology side of the digital transformation initiative, right? And in the long term, manufacturers will move away from monolithic, inflexible systems toward microservices-based architectures. That's one of the things that we are really seeing being impacted by industrial DevOps in the future, or for the future of manufacturing, right? Another really important point to highlight here is to drive innovation through open collaboration and ecosystems, right? What we see is that industrial DevOps will also foster a move towards open collaboration and the creation of what we call interconnected ecosystems, right? And as industries become more digitalized and interconnected, no single company can afford to innovate in isolation, right? And here is where the ecosystem appears, right? The ecosystem of vendors, system integrators, OEMs, and end users, right? What we see in the future is that rise of collaborative platforms where, as I said, OEMs, software vendors, end users co-create solutions leveraging open source tools, and shared data standards, okay? And we are also seeing a third big impact of industrial DevOps in the future of manufacturing, which is DevOps itself being a competitive differentiator. And why I say this? Because we believe that industrial DevOps will become a competitive differentiator for technology providers, with manufacturers seeking out partners that offer continuous updates and cloud-based services as part of their core offerings, as well as disaster recovery tools, right? For all the reasons that you mentioned before, Gerry, and this will fundamentally change the way industrial solutions are marketed and sold, with the focus shifting from selling standalone products or standalone solutions to end-to-end service ecosystems, right? So that's in a nutshell the three of the main points that we see in industrial DevOps platforms, industrial DevOps ecosystems impacting the future of manufacturing. At the end of the day, again, we are seeing industrial DevOps as one of the main drivers of the industrial digital transformation.
Powerful statement. I couldn't agree more. Thank you for sharing that, Sebastian. And with that, you touched on competitive. What is the competitive outlook? How are we seeing different vendors approaching industrial DevOps today?
That's a really good question, Gerry, and please let me tell you that we are currently working on a market research report on industrial DevOps, and of course, competitive landscape is one of its most important sections, right? Well, the idea is that the competitive landscape across the industrial DevOps market or sector, right, is nascent. The reality is that it's nascent compared to other manufacturing or industrial markets, and it's still evolving, right? With each vendor, and this is the most important thing, each vendor is bringing its own approach to industrial DevOps, right? What we expect in the near future is seeing an increase in the number of competitors, but also consolidation via strategic partnerships and, why not, acquisitions as well. So we are seeing we are expecting to see a lot of movement within this space, not just fast growth, but also the inception of new players on the other hand, on one hand, but on the other hand, consolidation, again, via strategic partnerships and mergers and acquisitions, right? And a current snapshot of the competitive landscape, as I told you, regarding different vendor approaches, shows a few players, but with Copia leading the pack with its unique approach, right? And why I say Copia has its own unique approach, right? Because, for instance, other vendors' approaches are centered on, for instance, virtual PLC or orchestration capabilities. There are a few vendors doing that. There are also a few vendors doing translation of PLC code into human language. Maybe another vendors doing, or offering DevOps packages that includes, project management, version control, automated testing. So you have a few vendors on each of those categories, right? But why I say Copia is leading the pack? Why I say Copia has its own unique approach? Well, because you offer a DevOps platform that enables end-to-end OT visibility and control. You have a Git-based source control, seamless software integration with many different PLC programming environments. You made a lot of emphasis with your automated backup solution, Device Link, on quick disaster recovery, multi-device version matching, and cloud-based management. And last but not least, you focus on preemptive crisis management and production optimization. And it is well demonstrated by your deployment at Amazon, right? Where you automatic the backup of over 500 PLCs across 16 different sites, aiming to reduce unplanned downtime by 80%, right? So not just your technological capabilities, but also your well-proven, big, huge use cases, we think that that makes of Copia a leader in the space today in the competitive landscape. And that's why you are a leader. But the question is why you are a pioneer in this space, because you can be a leader, but not a pioneer. But what we see is that Copia is earning both distinctions, right? Okay, you are a leader with your current approach, right? But truth to be told, you were the first company worldwide to introduce the concept of industrial DevOps in manufacturing, right? Since your inception, I think back in 2020, right? And you saw, basically you saw the opportunity to bring the agile and automated development practices to industrial OT, right? Then you were also the first vendor worldwide to publish a really thorough piece of research on the state of industrial DevOps market, which is a huge, you know, it's a huge gift, I would say that word, if I may, to the community, to the manufacturing community, right? And as I mentioned before, you have a massive use case, you know, to showcase, which is the AWS one, right? Automating the backup of more than 500 PLCs across 16 different sites, you know, and Amazon is aiming to achieve huge numbers or a huge reduction in unplanned downtime, right? So basically, for all these reasons, is that we at Frost & Sullivan consider Copia not just the leader, but also the pioneer, right, in the industrial DevOps space, right? And by that, you are setting the bar so high and setting the benchmark also for all the other industrial DevOps vendors in the space.
Thank you, Sebastian. I really appreciate all of that and the glowing words and your deep knowledge of our case studies and everything else. Yeah, honestly, it's been so fun being here. Like I said, I was at Rockwell before, but as soon as I saw Industrial DevOps and started reading and learning about it, it's just so powerfully impactful. And I've been so fortunate to work with so many of our customers so closely and to hear their experience with it and their vision for the growth of it, which is very aligned to what we talked about today. Continuing to get that workforce bought in, continuing to get the OT space bought in. One other vision, I won't sidetrack too far, but one other vision that I have for the future, and I think we touched on this briefly in our prep, but at some point, because of disasters like the ones we've mentioned today, and the continual convergence of IT and OT, I think we're going to see a restructuring of organizations where IT and OT are within the same org so that their goals are closely aligned and that they are having those weekly or daily meetings to make sure that everything is covered, that there is not shadow IT over here and shadow OT over there, to protect the organization and have a best-in-class approach.
And that's where DevOps will have its huge or its highest impact, right? Because remember, DevOps was born in the IT world, right? So when that IT-OT, the so-called IT-OT convergent, IT-OT integration happens, which is happening right now in the market, probably at a slow pace, but which is happening. But as soon, you know, while it's evolving, you will see the influence of DevOps, right? Not just industrial DevOps as a methodology, as a framework, impacting, right, that trend, right? So, yeah, I couldn't agree more, Gerry, with that.
Totally. No, thank you, Sebastian. So I'm looking for any questions. It doesn't seem like we have any in. If anybody on the call has a question, please feel free to put that in the box. Since we don't have any questions right now, I had one other thing that I wanted to run by you that I think we have touched on in the past, and it's something that I think about often. And That's coming from my past experience working on ERP systems, MES systems, QMS, all the acronyms that exist on the plant floor and within the facilities. We talk about so much the AI adoption, ML implementation, ML ops coming into organizations to help bring efficiency and leverage that huge output of data. And you talked earlier about the edge. There's so much data being used on the edge. It's that milliseconds of data being reported so that you can better understand and predict maintenance and so many other parts of your operation. When we go to the base of what's feeding those models, I look very much at industrial DevOps as a foundation builder because it gives you that visibility and control at the baseline where you are connecting and programming the machines. If you have that visibility and control at the machine level, it is organized in that clear space with oversight, governance, and control. You better set that foundation as the data comes in for saying, hey, this ton of data that we just collected on this machine can go here and be compiled and helped predict how that machine's operating. This ton of data over here, we don't really need, and maybe it goes into a data lake for the future, but right now it's not something we can do anything with, so it doesn't make sense for us to try and go through it. So the way I'm thinking about it is being able to segment data and take the real-time insight data that you need to make decisions off of and have cleaner, better data filtered up and a way to segment things that you don't necessarily need to be looking at. And industrial DevOps sets that foundation. What do you think there, Sebastian? I know we've touched on it a little bit, and this is something that's nuanced and newer.
Well, yeah. Again, I couldn't agree more, Gerry, and I couldn't say that better, right? In terms of foundations, yeah, because the direct impact that we are seeing in currently in industrial DevOps is on these systems like PLC, right? PLCs, right? PLC programming. And again, I'd like to emphasize three words, right? Automation, collaboration, and continuous feedback, right? So if you are able to ensure a proper foundation in terms of PLC programming, PLC version control, these are mission critical systems. So disaster recovery, to have a disaster recovery management solution, if you are able to set that foundation, you are laying the ground for, as you said, upper systems, right? For better data management, better data analytics, better data visualization, and ultimately, driving actionable insights that will increase the business profitability. So I think I couldn't have said that better. I really like what you said about industrial DevOps, laying a strong foundation for what can be achieved with data by every single industrial organization, regardless if it's whether it's a larger enterprise or a small medium business, right? So yeah, I completely agree with that statement, Gerry. I really like it. It's setting a solid, strong foundation for what organizations can be achieved through data, right?
Thanks, Sebastian. And even beyond the PLCs, so you have the CMC machines, you have sensors, you have cameras, exactly. Like the expansion of IoT devices in that convergence of IT and OT, there's only going to be more. So that's another part that I keep thinking about, how you bring it all together and make sense of it.
And that's a topic for another webinar, another session, right? No, yeah, but now it's really interesting, right? How to, that leads me to think about how the manufacturing tech stack is right now being redesigned, right? Away from the rigid ISA 95 pyramid. But again, for the audience, that could be a really interesting topic for another webinar, right? But yeah, completely right, Gerry. Yeah, it has a lot of implications.
All right. Thank you so much, Sebastian. I know we've touched on so many things today. I hope we'll be able to do this again sometime soon and we can dig into those spaces where we didn't get to dig deeper today. Thank you to our audience. I really appreciate all of you for sticking with us today. If you do have any questions and follow-up, please reach out. You can contact me or Sebastian or both of us. We're available on LinkedIn, available via email. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Sebastian and Frost and Sullivan, for being a part of this fireside chat.
Thanks a lot, Gerry. Thanks a lot to the Copia organization. It's been a pleasure, not just for me, but also for the Frost and Sullivan organization to be part of this fireside chat session with the leaders in the industry, right? Previous, the previous persons that were participating, right? So thank you so much. It's been amazing. It's been really enjoyable discussion, and looking forward to many more of this discussion, of these engagements in the future. Thank you so much to everyone and to the audience as well.
Absolutely. All right. Have a great day. Thank you again, Sebastian, and thank you to our audience.
Thanks, Gerry. Thanks to the audience. Bye-bye. Take care.